Welcome to Becoming the GC, the podcast that dives deep into the journeys of general counsels and chief legal officers, uncovering the insights and strategies that help define their success. Hosted by Joe Schohl, founder of Inside Counsel Academy. We share real-life stories and practical advice from successful GCs, guiding you on your journey to the top. Tune in and discover what it takes to become the exceptional legal leader your organization needs.
Joe Schohl here. Today we spoke with Stacy Bratcher. She is someone I am so grateful to have gotten to know over the past year or two, and she is someone who gets things done. You'll hear some of her techniques for this in today's episode, where we got very tactical and practical. Stay with me to the end, where I'll share my key takeaways from the episode. The show is sponsored by Inside Counsel Academy, where in-house counsel go to elevate their careers while enhancing their lives. And also by General Counsel West, a law firm that supports GCs of healthcare companies and their teams with an inside counsel mindset. Without further ado, I bring you Stacy Bratcher. Today's guest is Stacy Bratcher. Stacy is the Senior Vice President and Chief Legal Officer of Cottage Health, a $1 billion health system in Santa Barbara, and a trustee of an $800 million workers' compensation insolvency fund for major employers in California, including Fortune 50 companies. And she is the creator and host of The Legal Department, a professional development podcast for lawyers, which I love to listen to and inspired me to start this show. Stacy, welcome to the show.
Hey, Joe. How are you?
I'm good. Okay, we have a lot to talk about. I'm impressed by all you've done, and I want to get to the heart of what's contributed to your success as an in-house lawyer.
Oh, wow. I look forward to learning that too.
All right, great. First, a little bit about your journey. So like many GCs, you started in private practice, made your transition to an in-house role. Tell me about your evolution as an in-house lawyer.
Well, I've written about this in the past that as a, young lawyer had really no idea about in-house practice, what was involved, that there were different stair steps to the career. And so when I took the job at USC, I was just really excited to be part of a mission-driven organization. I was kind of going back to my roots in state government, where I was really engaged and passionate about the work. And so that's what I was looking for in in-house roles. And, I was, hate to say lucky, but I really landed at a good place with a very supportive boss who really gave me opportunities, or where there were opportunities, let me step into those. So I got my first promotion, I think it was 3 or 4 years after getting to the university. And it was the result of a big transaction that we did that created a new business line. And so then I became the head lawyer over that business line. And then I went through a series of what I call the competency curse, which was I was demonstrated some sort of aptitude or and was regarded as a pretty competent person there. And so as new opportunities developed, like taking on risk management, we had a transition in the risk management space, and I took that over for the university. The GC at the time needed a number 2 to run the day-to-day, and that's how I became deputy general counsel. And then my last role was the outgrowth of really a reorganization that occurred as a result of a major crisis event. So that's kind of how I got what I call the big chair at university.
And when you joined, it was was it at the inception of a new venture for USC, or?
No, there was, so I joined in 2005, and at the time, the university didn't have its own health, I would say commercially oriented health services. So the medical school staffed the county hospital, one of the big county hospitals, and there were a bunch of allied health services, social work, dentistry, pharmacy, but it was purely an academic and research part of the business. And then in 2009, we entered into a transaction with Tenet Healthcare that operated 2 hospitals on our health sciences campus. And when we took those over, then we were all of a sudden in the healthcare industry. So that was the new business venture.
I see. Okay, got it. And then tell me about your transition then from USC to Cottage Health.
That was really, unexpected. So I had this, very senior role and an executive role at the university. And my scope had broadened beyond healthcare to the higher ed part of the business. And, I kind of struggled to position it this way, but I was not pumped up about the higher ed stuff. I always say I don't like fraternities in football. There's so much, it's like teenagers, like you get all of the nasty stuff that teenagers are involved in. They are your number one customers. And I really just didn't want that kind of part of the business. And my husband and I were on a getaway around New Year's in 2020. And we were up here in the Central Coast region. We were walking on the beach. And I said, I would love to live up here, but there are no jobs. And I said, unless Cottage Health ever called me. And Cottage was, is headquartered in Santa Barbara. And this is no joke. In February of 2020, I got a recruiter call for the general counsel role at Cottage. And I mean, talk about, somebody was listening, because that opportunity showed up for me. And I did explore it, but I was sort of this is also true, until the pandemic. I was exploring it, but I never really seriously considered it. And then when I was in my dining room, on Zoom calls 24/7, I was like, what the heck am I doing? Why don't I go up to Santa Barbara? So I really got serious about the opportunity, after March.
Wow. That made my hair stand up a little bit. So it was maybe some kind of divine intervention there. And then
maybe, who knows?
Yeah. And
careful what you wish for.
Which we don't know where that came from.
Yeah.
All right, great. So tell me about the curse of competence. So tell me about what were the important things that you were doing that people saw that you would be effective in moving into the next role.
Well, I mean, I'll just say I'm an action-oriented person. And in large organizations, I know you worked at a couple big public companies. I don't know if this was the case, but especially in academics, it can be very hard to get things done. Things can take a lot of time. People may or may not be aligned on an agenda. And so there's certain ways that they can slow things down. And I am somebody that likes to, it's why Short Skirt, Long Jacket is my pump up song, because I really do use a machete to cut through red tape. So I think I was seen as somebody that was able to get things done. I've talked about this before, one of my core values is authenticity, and I really get inspired by connecting with people. And so I think that combination of, somebody who is going to get things done and is going to be very, a straight shooter. One of the best compliments I ever got was from a colleague who called me a WYSIWYG. I don't know if you know that acronym, but it's
what you see is what you get.
Yes. And that is absolutely me. And it was so great to have somebody acknowledge that. So that's what I would say. And then, preparation meets opportunity.
Right. So. Right. How did you get things done? What does that look like?
Well, I mean, one of the ways, I want to hear how you get things done, because I know you are, very effective yourself, was, I found, and I still find in meetings, we all sit around and talk about things, and there's a little clarity a lot of times at the end as to what are the actions that we're taking. So I think this is one of my talents, is to try to focus groups around okay, we've talked about this. What are our next steps? And then doing the lawyer thing, which is, and what I learned at a law firm, which is follow up, right. And not that I'm doing the things that I'm actually physically doing myself, but that I created sort of a feedback loop. And then I would communicate those developments up my chain, hey, we had this meeting. These are the things that are supposed to happen. Joe's supposed to handle this. You might want to have Michael follow up with him, So I think, taking my bent for action and turning it into, again, just a process to get things done was, I don't know. I mean, I didn't really ask, why did they, promote me, or why did they think I was effective? But that's just my read.
Right. I think that's brilliant, taking that opportunity at the end, because you're right. At the end of most meetings, people are thinking ahead, wanting to get to the next one, and filling that gap. I mean, you can even do that as a relatively junior person, being
Oh,
that person
totally.
to right, and then doing the recap and checking to see if people have followed up. And
Yeah, it's very easy to sort of fade out. I mean, I'm sure, I mean, we all have this experience in meetings, right? Where like, maybe you go, there's no agenda, or, it meanders and, everyone's looking at their phones and like, why are we here? But anybody, as you said, can bring a process and a discipline to what we're doing here. And then what are the next steps?
yeah, and I think it then positions you as a leader even before you have formal leadership responsibilities, because you're seen as the leader of that project or the person moving it ahead.
Hence the competency curse.
Was there another side to that coin? That you described the environment, and here you are pushing to get things done. Did that present any development opportunities?
I don't know if that in and of itself presented opportunities. I certainly, as a result of being seen as a leader or somebody getting things done, I got invited to a lot of different meetings, which one of my go-to sayings is, we can't go to everyone's bake sale. Like every meeting is not worth me being there. But certainly it helped me get into different rooms. It, elevated my reputation as somebody that could get things done. And I think when there were opportunities, I was on the short list for people to give them to. So
when you stepped into the leadership role, were there things that you had to learn how to do that you didn't know how to do yet?
when you say leadership role, which one do you mean?
Either one. At USC, you had a leadership role, and then obviously at Cottage as well. But your
Yeah,
first leadership role.
in the managing GC role, I think there were many, many challenges. Certainly the time, it was in 2018, which was, Me Too and Varsity Blues and, just a tsunami of different challenges just in terms of the work. I think one of the things that I don't know, not prepared, but one of the things was that as being part of the full university, the number of constituents and stakeholders just ballooned. So there's, something like 23 schools. So all of those schools have deans, all of a sudden they've got a seat at the table. I'm in the president's cabinet now, and, watching folks who had previously been, a level up are now more peers. What's that like? And learning how they operate, learning how, meetings where we're both present and how to navigate politics in a in the moment kind of situation. It was a big stage to cut your teeth on. Let's just say that.
And do you look back on that as a big jump in your professional development, or was it sort of a natural evolution?
I think it was a big jump. I think it was a big jump. And the other thing that happened at, and this is all public, is that there was a big leadership transition. So whereas I had worked with many of the folks, a level up for, a decade or more, all of a sudden they're not there anymore. And you're learning this new job with people you don't know, you don't have a relationship with. And I describe it as being somewhat unmoored, everything's the town is the same, but it's, the streets are different. It was just a little disorienting time to take over that role.
Yeah. So what did you do?
I would still lean on the folks who had been there, for advice. I had a number of informal mentors. I've talked about before, I have had and still have an executive coach. So, but it was an incredibly challenging time, because at the same time, like I said, as I'm learning this new role, the university's also just awash in different challenges. So it was a tough time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anything else from that time that comes to mind?
The other thing that, and what was not challenging, but a part of that, while I'm getting my sea legs under me with a new team that I'm sort of colleagues with, I'm also building a team. Like we're, expanded our litigation department. We, got in legal operations. So I am both learning up and down, so probably didn't do the best job onboarding people because we're all drinking through a fire hose. And I don't know, they have relationships, or they're sort of the service partner, as so to speak, to different, senior vice presidents that I don't necessarily have relationships with. So I can't, give them any advice. So it was, it was a growing experience, both managing my own team and then becoming a team member at the next level.
Yeah. And how did that translate then? When you're going to Cottage, you're stepping into a new situation. You haven't been elevated from your peers. So I imagine it's quite different.
I mean, it was a much, first of all, I got that job during COVID. So, I mean, although we were in person, all of the meetings were on Zoom. So we'd all be in our offices on Zoom. I was the first in-house lawyer, first in-house general counsel. So, that's in and of itself a whole new ball of wax to figure out. It was, not wanting to overstep. So I think I came into this role very in a listening and curiosity mindset, where I didn't want to, come in kicking the door down and being a bull in a china shop like this. I really appreciated that we were in uncertain times. As you probably remember, every, week, every couple of days, the health department comes out with new rules, and how are we supposed to deal with that? CDC, et cetera. So really trying to be a partner and coming in with a curiosity first mindset was, I think, what helped me integrate well into the team.
Did you have during that time, was there any disparity between state and county, or were they pretty aligned?
What do you, in terms of
regulations
the COVID?
And requirements?
Between the state and the county, the local health officials, certainly. Yeah. And as you know, the Department of Labor would come out, the Federal Department of Labor would come out with rules. CMS would come out with rules. And yeah, it was a great time to be a health care lawyer, right? But it was also nobody had ever experienced, day-to-day changes in regulations. So. Yeah.
So as you got your foundation there, what were the, sort of 2 or 3 things that you realized that you needed to do to put in place that weren't yet present?
Well, I was building a legal team. That's the first thing. I bet it was a year and a half that every day at the end, I would say, what did you do before I got here? Because there was always a line of people. There were they had me scheduled back to back to back, Zoom schedules. I'm sure you were familiar with, you had to really schedule bathroom breaks because there was such a demand and this ease of having Zoom meetings, and everybody can come at any time, and, we don't have travel time to get anywhere. So, just getting my hands on what I call inbounds and what were the pockets of work that needed attention, and where, certain things were happening. We had risk management issues. We've always, all hospitals have risk management issues. How were those being handled? Who was interacting with carriers? Who was managing the defense counsel? All that stuff was happening before I got there, and I had to kind of migrate it into my team. And then thinking about what is the team that I needed. That was sort of my job one, was inventorying what's the work and making sure I had the right resources to service the work.
Back-to-back meeting schedule, like you've described. How did you find time to get actual work done?
Well, Joe, I got to say, I wish I had known you better at that point, because, you and others have been really helpful to me in terms of thinking about managing that calendar and scheduling white space, because I certainly didn't do that at that point. I was, multitasking. I have a practice now. I spend this time now on podcasting and other things where I would get up very early in the morning. On the weekends, I get up early in the morning and I spend, it's 2 or 3 hours reading or catching up. So I would kind of work around the edges. I'm not saying it was a particularly productive or, certainly not best practice. But if I had my time machine, I would have, listened to the Joe Schohl playbook and had calendared some focus time.
But a lot of that comes from experience, right? And having gone through periods of time. I mean, I know I did where, my email time was between 11 p.m. and midnight, for a couple of years, right? I mean, there are just times when you have to deviate from the perfect to get stuff done.
Yeah, right.
But you're cataloging away, okay, in the future, this isn't sustainable, this pace. And so how do I do it, more effectively in the future in terms of preserving my long-term viability? And so I was going to ask you, what do you do to keep your energy at the level it needs to be to do all the things that you do?
Well, I got to say, it kind of goes back to the conversation about, whether I liked healthcare or higher ed better. Because I think being excited and into the work that you do, into the industry that you're in is really important. I actually read a LinkedIn post today about somebody described, what it's like to work at a tech company. That wouldn't be a fit for me. It would not. I'm sorry, folks. I don't know how to use a MacBook very well. I'm not on Slack. I'm not, wearing, Golden Goose sneakers or whatever. I'm not that person. And so I think being passionate or at least connected to the work that your company does is really important. And so for me, I feel like helping people be healthy and being there to help the caregivers provide the very best care is something I'm excited about. Being part of a being an important organization in a community is something that is important to me and gets me excited and inspired. The other thing I love, and this is why I'm doing the legal department podcast, is I love developing teams. I love helping colleagues and team members be the best versions of themselves and get to the goals that they want to accomplish. So thinking about those two things, keeps me going.
Great. And it sounds like the morning time is your sort of preferred quiet time away from the whirlwind of daily activity.
Yeah, it is. And
is it a self-reflective time? Do you have any self-reflective practices to integrate what you're experiencing?
I do. And here's a peek into, into my calendar. So 3 days a week, I work out in the morning. And then the other 2 days of the work week, I get up and I'm an early riser and I also go to bed very early, which I'm pretty open about also. And I take that time and many times I have a journal, and it started as a coaching journal that I had, and I was actually reflecting on that before this call earlier this week. So I will take some time to do that, and then I kind of make a list. I mean, I hate to be so dorky about it, but I make a to-do list of the things that I want to accomplish in that very precious morning time. As you know, as a podcaster, it's you don't just show up to this, who do I want to interview? Am I prepared for the interview? Am I promoting the episode that just came out? Are there things I need to do with the website? Podcasting is kind of its own part-time job. I also dedicate a good amount of that time to staying up on health industry news. I mean, there is so much every day, and especially these days, every day there's a new rule, interpretation, case, et cetera. And part of how I'm a valuable team member for my organization is that I know what's going on.
Love it. What are your go-to sources?
Well, in healthcare, there's several. I mean, I'm a Wall Street Journal reader. I think that's cuts across most industries. I read a lot of American Health Law Association publications. Becker's Healthcare is a nice carpet bomb of what's happening in healthcare. And then The ABA, the American Bar Association, I really encourage people to get involved and use their resources. They have really high quality reporting. Their ABA journal is really great. So those are kind of my go-tos.
That's great. I'm going to add that to my list, the ABA. I haven't really been connected with them in years. So
it's kind of a East Coasty thing, you know,
Okay,
and
yeah.
we're here in California, but you know, I've really gotten a lot out of that membership.
yeah, for sure. Wall Street Journal, for sure. AHLA, Health Law 360 is another thing that I tend to read. And then the other one, and I think this is somewhere on your list because we've talked about it before, but Harvard Business Review.
Oh yeah, right.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. There's always good nuggets in
I
there.
always feel like I'm plugging for them. I have no affiliation, but when you subscribe, you get access to all of their historical articles as well. And there's nothing that happens like in an organization where they haven't written something about it.
Oh yeah, right. I think that's a great suggestion. It's a very broad catalog.
Okay, great. So tell me about, in this role, no matter what, no matter how long you've been doing it for, new things are going to come in front of you that you don't have substantive experience with, legal issues. What do you do when that happens?
Well, I will tell you, and I feel like another Bratcher drumbeat is I go to my network. I have what I call my coffee clatch, and we share a lot of resources. So I'll first go to my coffee clatch of other health system GCs, and I'll say, "Hey, has anyone faced this before? Who have you used?" And then I go about, dialing for dollars to see like who is an expert that I can, have an intro call with, learn a little bit about. I certainly, go to the Google and see, what can I learn just from reading. But really the network, the relationships, I really encourage people, if you don't have a peer group in your industry, to really work to get that. And, certain outside counsel, if you work with big firms, they have a deep bench all over. I will say, it's uneven quality. You might have a great real estate partner and their transactional team isn't great. Who knows? But going to those, existing relationships and digging a little deeper to see what resources they may have is another good strategy.
Excellent. Tell me about what techniques you have for being seen as an ally or a partner to your business folks.
I don't know if it's techniques as much as it is just who I am. So, and I'm in another group, the Ready Set GC community, which is a group that seeks to promote and support new women general counsel. And we were talking with a group of us the other day, and one of my peers said, the general counsel needs to realize how your company makes money and that it's your job to support that. I think that many lawyers are very aligned around risk management. And that's certainly, obviously that's core to the job, but the way you are a strategic partner, the way you are really a team member is if you're aligned on the business objectives, and if the business, at a nonprofit, so making money isn't why we're here, but if you're aligned on why your business is there and that you have a role in supporting that, I think it's key. I actually, as part of, I do a C-suite series on the legal department, and I interviewed Evan Wong, who's the CEO of Checkbox AI. And he said the same thing. He said, I need a general counsel who is focused on my business goals. So it's not so much techniques as much as it is aligning your mindset around that. And so if you have the right mindset and somebody brings you a question, if you're thinking about like, how can I help the company make money, or how can I help them with the business objective, you have that risk management in your mind too, but it's not what you're leading with.
And I would say that when you do that, you're actually in a better position to do the protective role of the GC in the organization because you're included in conversations, you're trusted as a partner and an ally, and not just there to police.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your colleagues.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. What haven't I covered that you think is sort of one of your secret sauces that you would share with the listeners about how to be successful in an in-house role?
The secret sauce, I think, Scott Becker, the founder of Becker's Healthcare, I interviewed him on the podcast last year. And he said that the keys to being successful are to be competent and nice, like to be easy to work with. And so I would give folks that advice. And maybe it goes back to, what we were talking about, me being kind of a accountability driver at USC, but, being somebody who is approachable, not leading with judgment, which I think, certainly when I was in a law firm, I thought, why can't these clients do X, Y, Z? You'd always see like, how'd they get in this situation in the first place? Right. And, kind of putting that holier than thou or that judgment hat to the side and really, just being there to be an open door and a friendly ear for people, I think is good advice. So Scott Becker's competent and kind. Nice.
And what about advice to your younger self?
That is a tough one. That's a stumper. Well, I was on, and I actually republished this episode. I was on an episode of Personal Jurisdiction podcast, which is a podcast that's focused to the more younger folks in their career. And I would not have borrowed so much money out of law school. That's I think one of my key takeaways.
Amen to that. If you weren't a lawyer, what do you think you'd be doing today?
Back if I hadn't borrowed a bunch of money, I think that at a certain level of government, I would have really enjoyed being in a public policy role, government relations. I do that now as part of my GC role, but I came out of state government in a policy role, and I really enjoyed that. So maybe that. The other thing, I don't know how I feel about this today, but when I was in between college and law school, I was sort of interested in doing public relations. After having done a lot of crisis communications, I don't know that I'd want to do that, but that was sort of another potential interest. But I don't know. Like, I feel like this is a good fit for me, so I'm going to stay the course.
Right. I always joke in the barter economy, sort of the post-apocalyptic world, I would have, I'd be in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah. What would you be trading?
I don't know. Does anybody need legal advice?
Always. I think these days, always. Yeah.
Right. What are you looking forward to?
What am I looking forward to? I've been thinking I'm still, in the meat of, the heavy career days, but I do in the future want more of a portfolio career. So I really, back to my mornings where I'm, got my head down and reading and doing some reflecting. I'd love an opportunity to do more reading and writing, whatever form that takes. I'd love, I sit on the board of a couple nonprofits. I enjoy that. Would love to parlay that board experience into a paid corporate board seat and some investing. I've gotten involved with a couple opportunities to do some angel investing, and I've enjoyed that. So
what do you do with your free time?
You mean like the parenting? I do parenting. I work out. We live in lovely Santa Barbara, so we spend a lot of time outside, but not a ton of free time. But
you podcast?
Yeah, I took that on. I thought, here, let me fill these morning hours with some more legal inspired work. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's been great having you on the show, Stacy. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And I think our listeners will really benefit from this conversation. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed our time with Stacy. I know I did. A few key things I'll take from the episode are how Stacy demonstrated leadership even before she was in a formal leadership role by stepping into the void that often exists at the end of meetings and being the one to lead the group in determining next steps and then following up after the meeting to help move things to completion. I also loved the advice she passed along from one of her guests on her podcast who said a great path to success is to be both competent and nice. Being approachable, being an ally to your business partners is key if you want to be a sought-after advisor and eventually, if you're not careful, will get you into that GC role. Okay, until next time, this is Joe Schohl. For more tips on accelerating your path to becoming a world-class general counsel, visit InsideCounselAcademy.com and connect with me directly on LinkedIn.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Becoming the GC. Whether you're preparing for the GC role or looking to sharpen your skills as a sitting general counsel, we hope this episode offered valuable insights and inspiration. If you enjoyed the conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your colleagues and friends. Explore more resources and join our community at InsideCounselAcademy.com. Please tune in next time for more insights and inspiring stories from successful legal leaders.